A Not So Super Bowl. I'm Rebecca Lieb.
I'm Jason Horton.
And this is Ghost Town.
Barret Robbins, the enigmatic center for the Oakland Raiders, became the focal point of one of the most perplexing and talked about stories in Super Bowl history. His mysterious disappearance just days before Super Bowl 37 in 2003 left teammates, coaches, and fans in a state of shock and confusion. The Raiders, poised to face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in what would have been one of the most anticipated games of the season, found themselves grappling with the absence of their Pro Bowl lineman, a key figure in their offensive strategy. So we're talking about the very strange and very mysterious disappearance of Barret Robbins. The Super Bowl was a week or so ago. I'm not a huge sports person, but culturally it's very, very interesting, and it usually can be very, very dark, just like anything under the spotlight, entertainment.
Yes.
And imagine that the Super Bowl is in 2 days, and one of the players is just gone.
Yeah, like a Travis Kelce is gone. You'd be like,
yes, something like that. You'd be like, what? Now, keep in mind, it's 20 years ago, and a lot of things aren't as robust. Information, social media, and I would go as far as to say the full understanding of things like mental illness and addiction and such. So it's a pretty sad story, but just another very interesting story in the world of sports.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that hadn't happened before and since. I don't, to go missing, you're already an elite athlete, it's already an intense situation. You qualified for the Super Bowl. You've made it to the Super Bowl, and then you go missing?
Previous to this, he had been diagnosed with depression, even back in his college days, and he was at the team hotel, the La Jolla Hyatt, and he just left with a group of men he didn't really know. He skipped the team breakfast, leaving his teammates confused. Later, he also missed the team's final walkthrough session, deepening the mystery of his absence. A lot's going on. There's a lot to wrangle. But they're also like, hey, man, where are you?
Yeah.
This is not just an ordinary game.
No.
And nobody knew where he was. So they initially thought that he may have even been kidnapped.
Mm-hmm.
Team executive Bruce Allen recalled worrying for Robbins' life. And after alerting the NFL, which then contacted local law enforcement, meanwhile, Robbins was miles away, caught in a whirlwind of reckless behavior that left him barely aware of his own identity.
Oh my God.
So this guy's 6'3", about 325 pounds, and he was just bar hopping across San Diego, and even went as far as going into Tijuana, which is relatively close, but not that close considering the short amount of time he was gone, but a crucial amount of time he was gone.
Yeah. And that's also, it's an ordeal. Like you are leaving one country into another, and it doesn't take a second. It's an hours long process.
So he was drinking heavily and engaging with sex workers and doing drugs. And he was partying in a way, as almost if it was over and they already won. Here's the thing. At one point, he already thought they won the Super Bowl.
Wow.
It's a pretty dark place to be. And
yeah.
That's how far kind of gone he was. He thought they had already won and was talking about it as if he was celebrating.
Yeah, that must have been so scary for everyone around him too, because I'd imagine, 20 years ago, you have text, you have a pretty robust communication, not like it is today, but not hearing from him or hearing indecipherable things, not knowing where your friend, your family, your teammate is a really hard thing to deal with. Also, and you now have to go and play in the Super Bowl. So,
and also he's been a regular athlete for a while with some issues, but a relatively just professional athlete. So a lot of people are just under the assumption it's like, yeah, we're just all doing our job.
Yeah.
It's also probably hard to tell a very large grown man what to do in a way that's not offensive or condescending.
Yeah, and also if
But
he's not in his right mind, you don't know if you might spark something or a different kind of mental pathway. People can be volatile in that state.
and also kind of pre-game, he felt undermined when head coach Bill Callahan made last-minute changes to the game plan, shifting away from the power running game, a strategy Robbins excelled in, to incorporate more passing, which involved him a little bit less. This decision, made against Robbins' wishes and those of many teammates, left him feeling disheartened just 2 days before the biggest game of his life. As the day wore on, Robbins became increasingly detached from reality and his professional responsibilities. He later admitted that he couldn't recall where he went, who he went with, or what happened exactly during that time. The only clear memory, even 8 years later, was that he spent the entire day drinking. That's all he remembers is I was drinking.
Wow.
The first member of the Raiders traveling party to encounter Robbins was former player Calvin Branch, who helped him get into a cab back to the La Jolla Hyatt. When he finally returned to the hotel on Saturday evening, after being gone for roughly 14 hours, he was incoherent, disoriented, and even mumbling something about the Raiders having already won the Super Bowl.
Wow.
He told me he was excited that we had won the game, Allen recalled, and asked to catch a plane to the Pro Bowl in Honolulu the next morning. The team doctor who examined Robbins that night quickly realized he was intoxicated but couldn't determine the extent of if it was drinking and drugs or just drinking. Concerned for his well-being, he recommended hospitalization for observation. Head coach Bill Callahan downgraded Robbins' game status from questionable to out. Robbins spent Super Bowl Sunday in an undisclosed hospital, while the Raiders went on to lose the game 48-21. The incident marked a tragic low for Robbins, whose struggles with mental health and addiction overshadowed what should have been the pinnacle of his career.
Oh, that's so sad.
A lot of the conversation of this back then, and people didn't realize, people were this was a huge thing, especially if you're like a Raiders fan, and they were like, how could this guy, such a rock star, and blow this off? I don't think people realize until much later his issues with mental illness and a lot of things happening. I think people just assume that he was just irresponsible, where there was nothing else. It was just your own narcissism. And, entertainers and athletes are paid a lot of money, but they're under a lot of pressure. And also, we talk about things like CTE and head trauma and stuff that are talked about more now rather than the 2003 lens.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the thing, is people that I discovered realizing like, oh, I thought he was just being a jerk. Not realizing, oh, he had problems beyond just what problems you might have on a baseline level working under those conditions, which can be very difficult physically and mentally.
Yeah. And it's taboo to even talk about when you're not, world-class athlete, much less, someone who's supposed to be this like really strong, like very like macho.
High level.
Yeah, exactly. Type of a person.
Robbins' absence was a significant blow to the Raiders, who lost the Super Bowl to Tampa 48-21. Following the incident, Robbins spent 30 days at the Betty Ford Center for treatment. He resumed play the following season, but was released by the Raiders in 2004 after testing positive for a banned substance. And it's not really important to talk about, but his life since then has been marred with issues with illness and run-ins with the law and such. It's not really important for this, but has had ongoing struggles and issues since then. But I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing I found regarding the Super Bowl, and the thing where you think one thing's happening because you don't have the information, especially even 20 years later. You're like, oh, this is not the story that I thought it was. I just want to be, was mad that my team lost. And the Raiders has every team has a rabid fan base, but the Raiders has a very rabid fan base.
Oh, yeah.
I think that just compounds it. But I think time and the light of day illuminates what really was going on.